It's your girl, Professor Cinephile, and I am back today to talk about something a little bit, a little bit different than what I usually cover. I am going to do a film review, but I just wanted to take a moment to shout out Lou Gossett Jr. Um, phenomenal actor who recently passed away. He's battled various illnesses over the last couple of decades, but he recently passed away. And it's really sad. It's a true loss. I mean, the man lived, a full life, but it's always sad when you see, when we lose folks like that. For those who are unfamiliar, Louis Gossett Jr. has been in dozens of film over the span of his career. And he was the first African American to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and he won it for his role in the film An Officer and a Gentleman. You can go watch it. It's one of those films that's like, it's considered a classic in terms of like romantic kind of dramas. Like it's a go-to, one of those 80s films. Stars Richard Gere and some other folks. You can watch it if you want. It's kind of long. It's kind of if you're into that kind of thing. But Louis Gossett Jr. does stand out in his role as a sergeant there. So, check that out. But rest in peace to Louis Gossett Jr., trailblazer, history maker, one of our beloved favorites. And for this episode, I am going to review the film Roots. Now, Roots was one of those I'm I want to say breakout roles for him, but we have to think like this man has been acting since the 60s. He started out in Broadway. He was like in A Raisin in the Sun. He'd done things like that. I think that Roots, because it was a miniseries that was on television, so it came to people's homes, maybe a lot of people got introduced to him that way. So I mean, we could say breakout, but the way we think about breakout, it's up in the air. But let's get into Roots. Why not? So there's a whole conversation, and maybe I'll do one of these about this conversation because it's one that bothers me to no end. But this idea of people not wanting to see so-called trauma porn, I mean, aside from that phrase being totally nonsensical, people are complaining because they're saying, all of our films are about slavery and struggle and things like that. I mean, that is factually incorrect, and I wish people would stop saying it. The overwhelming majority of Black films and television shows are about families, romance, comedy, and holidays. Okay, so this idea that all we have, is trauma is really a nonsensical, and I think it's just a trendy thing that maybe started on Tumblr and continued on TikTok. I don't know, but it's factually not true. However, there are people that say that they don't want to watch films that show Black people struggling, and I get it, right? I understand you don't want to see us depicted as experiencing pain and hardship and things like that. But where do we draw the line? That's a personal decision, right? But to try to say that that's all that gets made, that's totally disrespectful to all the actors, actresses, screenwriters, filmmakers, producers, everybody out there that's making other types of films. Roots was important, it remains important, and I will always say that it's essential watching. Okay. It came out, and I'm gonna call it a film because that's to me, that's what it is. It was officially a mini series. It came out in 1977. It was a multi-part series that showed on people's televisions right in their homes, their good old American homes. And it was about the experiences of the main character, Kunta Kinte, who was played by LeVar Burton, our fave from Reading Rainbow and other things. He said this was his first major role. It's about Kunta Kinte and how he was kidnapped and brought into the what we call the United States now, to be enslaved, and his, kind of his journey, and then it morphs into like his family story, and then it goes on for a couple of generations or what have you. And it's based on the book, I think it's called Roots: The American Saga by Alex Haley. I will not get into the controversy around Alex Haley today because this is a film talk. But it's based on this story, which is said to be his family story, right? So you get this series. Okay, again, we're in 1977. Let's get some context about what's happening in the world of Black folks in the US, right? All right. So in the 60s, you have Dr. King is assassinated, Malcolm X is assassinated, uh, Medgar Evers is killed. You have the Black Panthers are formed, a lot of civil rights groups are formed, but then there's also a lot of FBI and CIA infiltration, a lot of corruption going on, a lot of heartbreak. And then the Vietnam War comes and extracts like thousands upon thousands of Black men and sends them off to war. Many of them never return, right? So you're setting a scene where Black folks are kind of in this space of like disillusionment, disenfranchisement, not knowing what's next. And there's a movement to try to empower folks. The Black Studies movement is really starting to gain traction. People are trying to challenge the media and change the depictions of Black people. And that's what's going on, right? So then you get these white people, these white men, which is pretty much how it had to be at that time, who take on the task of turning this book. And I don't know if you've ever read Roots. I've read Roots. It's like this thick. They take this book and they've got to turn it into a film. And they end up making it a multi-part series because it is so, it's like an American saga. So it is continuing over generations. That's what a saga is. And so they do it. And for that time, they did it very well. I am a Roots champion. I think that when we are in 2024 or even just the 21st century and we look back at classic like film and television, we have to be mindful about, trying to apply a modern lens and modern analysis to what we're watching then. If we look at Molefi Asante's location theory, we have to kind of locate our creators and our writers, our film directors, all those people in the times that they were in. And you have to look at the context around when they are creating these things, right? And yes, we can identify and we can say, oh, that's that particular trope, or oh, that's that. But we have to locate it there. So Roots itself is situated in the late 1970s, but it's telling this centuries old story. And you've got, I mean, you have a stellar cast, right? And I remember the first time I heard LeVar talking about how this was like his first major thing. I was like, what? Like he was so good, at playing Kunta Kinte, even though he was, from the US or what have you, he was so good at it. You had John Amos. John Amos, I mean, many people know him from Good Times. Okay, he played James Evans. Uh, John Amos, talented actor. Again, Louis Gossett Jr. is playing Fiddler. Ben Vereen, honestly, one of the most, the greatest multi-talented artists that, we've ever had, right? Leslie Uggams was there. She plays Kizzy. I mean, I could go on. There was some talent in this film, right? I think just kind of depicting the horrors of slavery, it did for what it was allowed to do at the time. Again, we're going to locate it there. For what it was allowed to do at the time, it was really gripping. It really was kind of like, oh my gosh, damn, like, look at what our people went through. And this is really like the first time that you've got depictions of enslavement, in the United States on people's televisions in their lives. They can't avoid it. They can't walk away from it. It's like right there, right? You want to talk about high viewership? I mean, Roots broke so many records. It's just like we had nothing like it beforehand, and it was really a gripping story, and it really weaves through. And I love that Alex Haley called it an American story because it really is an American story, right? Slavery is not Black history; it is American history. It is English history, Portuguese history. It is expansive history, and it's not something that we did or we created. And I think that when you watch Roots, you realize that like 50 years ago, people were getting insight for the first time. This is not something that was being taught in schools, not from the perspective of the people experiencing it, right? This was not something that was just common knowledge. And so what Roots was doing was really educating a lot of people about what exactly happened. And there were a lot of people who were just like, especially white people who were like, I had no idea about any of this, there were Black people who were just like, I didn't know this, so it was very educational. It is giving us the heart and soul of the experiences of these people, you just got to watch it like that. Watch it with empathy, watch it with understanding, watch it with the knowledge that they did not want us to know these things. They still do not want us to know these things. Roots, right? Roots got rebooted. I got to see that a few years ago. Roots got a reboot. I thought that reboot was actually really good. It was different, but it was really good, and I thought it was great for a newer generation to have access to that. Unfortunately, folks were like doing the whole "I'm tired of drama porn" stuff, and it's just like, but you also don't read. So you're not reading about this stuff. You're not learning about it in school. You got to get this knowledge somehow. We can't just act like slavery didn't happen. We can't act like our ancestors were not enslaved, right? So I think that films like Roots and television shows or things like that that depict that are so important. And I don't think we have enough of them. Honestly, I think we need many, many, many more. It's just how do we make sure that we are depicting things that give the characters agency and it's not coming through this like white gaze and this white lens, right? Um, for the Roots, the series, I'm going to give it 4 Purple Hearts out of 5. Uh, it still was made by white people and it still has some white gaze stuff going on, at points. But I do think it is one of the most important films that has ever been made, certainly about the experiences and the lives of Black people. So enjoy it and rest in peace, Lou Gossett Jr. We thank you for everything you've done.